Do you know why it's important to treat animals well? You might think it's obvious, but many people don't understand this. This is the sad story of a man who learned this lesson the hard way. In a bustling town where markets rang with noise and life, there lived a man named Victor. Victor was not poor, nor was he rich. He had just enough to eat, enough to keep his small rented house, but he was never satisfied. He wanted more money, more power, more respect. And what was the center of his strange story? Not gold nor land, but a living creature, a monkey. The monkey's name was Billow, a small brown-eyed creature with fur that once shone under the sun but now looked rough and dusty. Billow was not an ordinary animal. He was intelligent, quick, and full of expression. His eyes spoke what his mouth could not, but Victor never cared. To him, Billow was not a companion. He was a tool. Victor had bought Billow from a roadside seller who had tied the poor animal with ropes and was offering him for a cheap price. Victor thought, "People love monkeys dancing. They will pay to watch tricks. I will earn money." And so, he took Billow home. At first, the town children laughed and clapped when Victor forced Billow to dance. He would beat a small drum and Billow, out of fear, would hop, spin, and bow. Coins dropped into Victor's jar, and he would grin. But the moment the crowd left, his cruelty showed. If Billow failed to dance fast enough, Victor whipped him with a stick. If he refused to jump, he was left hungry. If he looked tired, Victor pulled his ears and shouted until Billow shrieked. The once lively creature slowly began to lose his sparkle. His tiny ribs started to show, his eyes grew tired, and yet Billow endured. Because even an animal knows fear of hunger and pain. Days turned into months. Victor grew harsher. The money was not enough. He began forcing Billow to perform dangerous tricks, climbing tall poles, jumping through rings of fire. The crowd gasped, some even protested, but Victor silenced them with his anger. "This is my monkey. He lives because of me. Without me, he is nothing." But Billow remembered the taste of freedom, the wind in the trees, the smell of the jungle far beyond the town. At night, when Victor tied him with chains in the corner of the small room, Billow dreamed of the forest he once knew. His tiny hands clutched the cold iron, his eyes wet with quiet tears. And yet, every morning, he woke up to the same cruelty. One afternoon, a group of travelers stopped in the town. Among them was a young boy named Ethan. He saw Victor shouting at Billow, forcing him to balance on a sharp stick while children clapped nervously. Ethan's heart ached. He whispered to his father, "Why doesn't anyone stop him?" But his father only sighed. "The world is unfair, my son. Some people's hearts are harder than stone." Ethan could not forget the monkey's eyes pleading, crying, filled with a voice that no one else seemed to hear. That night, when the market was silent, Ethan walked near Victor's small house. He saw through a crack in the wall, Billow chained, shivering, while Victor slept with a greedy smile. Ethan whispered softly, "One day, I will help you, little friend." Billow tilted his head. For the first time in months, he felt hope. But Victor's cruelty only worsened. One day, he forced Billow to perform even though the monkey was sick. His body was weak, his stomach empty, yet Victor beat the drum and shouted until Billow stumbled on the stage. The crowd gasped as Billow fell. Victor, enraged at his humiliation, struck Billow again and again, right there in front of everyone. Some people protested, others walked away in disgust, but Victor didn't care. He dragged the limp monkey back home. That night, something inside Billow changed. Pain turned to rage. Fear turned to fire. He stared at the chains around his wrists, then at Victor snoring on the floor, and a thought grew in his mind: enough. The very next evening, when Victor had drunk too much and fallen asleep, Billow pulled at his chains with all the strength left in him. Hours passed. Metal scraped against stone, blood dripped from his tiny hands, but finally the chain snapped. For the first time in months, Billow was free. But instead of running, he stayed. He climbed silently onto the wooden beam above Victor. He looked down at the man who had stolen his freedom, his food, his dignity, and his eyes, once full of fear, now burned with something else, vengeance. He picked up the stick Victor used to beat him. His little hands shook, not from weakness but from anger. And then, with a sudden cry that startled the silence, Billow struck Victor across the face. The man woke in shock, shouting, "You filthy creature!" He tried to grab him, but Billow leapt away, landing on the shelves, knocking over clay pots, sending shards flying. Victor stumbled, blood dripping from a cut on his cheek. News spread fast. Victor's monkey had gone wild. People gathered outside, peeking through windows as Victor tried to subdue Billow. But the monkey was faster, sharper, and burning with months of silent rage. Every whip Victor had once used was now turned against him. Every chain rattled as Billow swung from beam to beam, knocking objects down, biting, scratching, striking. The once mighty Victor, feared for his cruelty, was reduced to a man running in circles, terrified of the very creature he had enslaved. Finally, Billow cornered him. Victor's eyes widened as the monkey raised the same stick he had used to beat him countless times. For a moment, silence fell. The crowd outside held their breath, and then Billow struck. Again and again, Victor cried for mercy, but none came. Years of cruelty were answered in minutes of justice. When it was over, Victor lay unconscious, bruised and broken. Billow dropped the stick, his chest rising and falling with heavy breaths. He looked once at the sky, then at the open door. The people outside stepped aside as the little monkey walked out, not as a prisoner, but as a victor. Ethan ran to him. "Billow," he cried. The monkey stopped, tilted his head, and for the first time in so long smiled. Ethan gently picked him up. "You're free now. No one will hurt you again." The townspeople cheered, not for Victor, but for the small creature who had fought for his own freedom. Victor was taken away, his cruelty remembered as his curse. And Billow? He was given to Ethan's family, who treated him not as a tool, not as a slave, but as a friend. He roamed the gardens, climbed trees, ate sweet fruits, and slept peacefully under the stars. The scars on his body remained, but the chains in his heart were gone. People in the town whispered about the day a monkey defeated his master. Some said it was justice, others called it fate. But for Ethan, it was simple. Cruelty always destroys itself, and even the smallest voice, when pushed too far, will rise louder than any tyrant. And so, the story of Victor and Billow spread far beyond the little town, an unforgettable tale of pain, cruelty, and the sweet taste of freedom. If you liked the story, please hit the like button and share it with your friends. Thanks for watching. See you next time.